But in a situation where you find that you look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's now time for the newspaper review. But before we move on to, the front page covers, we already have our guest analyst in the studio, the person of Mukhtar Suleiman, public affairs commentator, joining us for a detailed review of, what today's papers are saying. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start with a Daily Trust newspaper. We have the lead story here that says, Captain, 2 soldiers killed after terrorist threat on Abuja Law School. We have writers that says, Army confirms attack, says troops combing area. Federal government puts schools on red alert nationwide. FCT schools shot as bandits intensify attacks on Abuja suburbs. We also have more stories at the top of the page. We have train attack. Families picket transport ministry as 3 more abductees released. Concerns rise over federal government's funding. Investors shun local bonds. Praise galore for history maker Toby Amusan. We also have bakers hike bread price by 20% and 4-day strike. Federal government says 20 million Nigerians infected with hepatitis B and C. Okada riders to federal government. Nationwide ban may create worse monster. Render 40 million jobless. And we have ASU strike. Electricity, bank, aviation workers join NLC nationwide protest. And these are some of the stories on the front page of a Daily Trust newspaper. Now let's start with, the lead story, talking about, the insecurity in Nigeria and how, there are already threats in the federal capital territory, already. A lot of people are, running helter-skelter, parents running to schools to actually pick their children, How do the residents actually remain safe?
If the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, which is Abuja, is not safe anymore for anybody, then the entire nation is in shambles, because this is where the head of the country lives. This is where the chief of staff is supposed to be. The chief of army staff is supposed to be. This is where the Ministry of Defense is, and all of that. And it's really, really sad and disheartening. It's quite painful, actually, if you look at it carefully. Because if you look at our infrastructure as a nation, it is not that we cannot handle these issues. It's not that we cannot deal with them. It's not like we cannot nip them in the bud. But we are misconstruing nonchalance for incompetence. So government doesn't care at this point. There's no political will yet. I don't know why. And it's just painful, really, for lack of better terms. We were saying something earlier when you said, do we keep praying or we pray? Come on, the Bible itself says faith without work is dead. The Quran itself says, we cannot change a thing about a people unless they are willing to change what is within themselves. So even if you go to the hood, you go to the streets, there's still also there are motivational speakers who still tell you that if you have belief and you don't work toward it, it's useless. So we can't keep doing that. We can't keep saying we're praying. We can't keep asking God for something when we're not willing to put in the work ourselves. And that is, we've talked about the insecurity. We've talked about the insecurity, and then we keep seeing our government. One of the news there says that they want to ban Okadas after the last Security Council meeting. They're saying that they're going to ban Okadas as a measure. That's dealing with an effect and not a cause. Most of these things have causes and effects. You have to deal with the cause. That way, you can eliminate the effect. But
before now, there have been reports that these bandits had set up cells around the Federal Capital Territory, and that there were pockets of kidnappings going on here and there. And in this report, where a captain and 2 soldiers were killed, if you go through it, you see that a source said that even when the captain and the 2 soldiers when the security agencies were alerted and they got there, that they were told not to tell anyone that there was this threat, that because they didn't want to embarrass the government. And some persons are saying, is the government not embarrassed already? Because even the convoy of the president was attacked on its way to Katsina not too long ago. So at what point would action, at what point would the government be so embarrassed that it would take action?
Well, I'll say this: you cannot shame the shameless. So when someone has already decided to not have any form of shame, you actually there's little to nothing you can actually do about it, because now each and every one of us are like we're like pending trending hashtags, or just another number waiting to be counted as part of casualties of this particular incident. And you would really think that, oh, when it starts affecting them, they will do something. It has started affecting them, and they're still doing nothing. So you begin to wonder, like,
why is nothing being done?
That is a very key question that I don't think I literally
But would
don't
you
have
say
an
it's
answer for,
incompetence of lack of resources?
It's not lack of resources. I've been to NIA. I have been, and I have seen firsthand some of the things that we have in this country. We've seen situations where if they steal your phone, you go report to DSS, they will track the phone, even if it's switched off. They will track it and then get you your phone, get the person and get you your phone. Some years ago, in ABU, there were some students who did something in Lagos, and then they came back to Zaria, they ran to Zaria, and they tracked them all the way from Lagos down to Zaria, picked them in a hot afternoon.
So do you think these network providers are complicit as well?
I wouldn't know about that. I think that is left for the NCC to answer. But the point is, we have the resources. That's why I opened my statement by saying that we're misconstruing nonchalance for incompetence. Nigeria is not incompetent.
You say we have the resources. So at what point would government say enough is enough? At what point would they put a stop to this?
We're hoping that someday they'll wake up and realize that maybe when it begins to affect their children as well. I think that's when it gets closer to home. You know, sometimes in the face of danger for ourselves, we're often we're still strong, so to speak. But when it begins to affect our loved ones, then I'm not praying that it does, but eventually when it begins to get closer to home for them, I'm thinking that at that point they'll be like, okay, we need to do something about this. And at this point, I am inclined to believe that there are vested interests that actually have something they're benefiting from this war. Sun Tzu, in one of Sun Tzu's articles, he said war is the most profitable business in the world. So no matter how it is, whenever there's an unrest, civil unrest anywhere, there's insecurity anywhere, somebody is making a large chunk of money from it. And as far as that person,
isn't it time to name and shame these people, whoever they are?
I hope that we get there where we actually go. Because I refuse to believe that the government does not know who they are.
Because
even if they don't, that speaks very little about. Still speaks a lot about their nonchalance.
Because when you look at the picture on the front page of the Daily Trust, you see students with their luggage outside the gate of Federal Government College Kwali, waiting to be picked up by their parents so that they could go home. FCT schools were supposed to close on Friday, and now they've been asked to close tomorrow, which is Wednesday. Now, when I was looking at this picture, I was thinking, some of these students may not come back after the holiday for fear. What does that do to our education? I mean,
aside from that, even as someone who went to a boarding school myself, you can be rest assured that some of these students may not even have the resource to leave school immediately. For some of them, they may not have the resource to actually leave immediately. For some of them, the parents might be somewhere right now. Now they have to cut short whatever it is that they are doing and start going helter-skelter to see how they can actually come back and pick up their kids. There's so many variables going on. There's so many impact that these have on so many variables in the country that, and the snowballing effect of it is something that I don't think the government are looking at in hindsight, because if you look at most of those things with so much apprehension, you should understand that, okay, if it keeps rolling and rolling, it's like dropping a small ball off the hill of a snowy mountain. The more it keeps rolling down, the bigger it gets, and when it gets to the ground, it's a large impact. We are hoping that before it gets to the ground, we can actually derail it or destroy it before it gets, because honestly, at this point, Nigeria is just on an inshallah mode. We're just on that inshallah mode.
Let's take a look at The Nation newspaper. On the front page of the Nation newspaper, we have the lead story that says panic in Abuja over attack on soldiers by terrorists. The first writer says 3 presidential guards wounded. FCT directs schools to close tomorrow. No cause for alarm, says the police. Then right at the top, above the masthead, we have no North governor took money to back Southern president. Tinubu presidential project for launch August 13th. 25-year-old Amusan wins gold for Nigeria. Then below the pictorial, we have a story that says varsity strike. 3-day industrial action begins after nationwide protest, says Labour. And then we also have the story, train attack, families march on transportation ministry. These are the major stories on the Nation newspaper.
Okay, let's start, still talking about insecurity, because it seems to, be the lead story on almost every, daily today. There's this, we actually saw also the viral video, of the abductees, the train abductees being flogged and all that. And, we've seen protests actually going on in Kaduna and Abuja. And we're actually, the latest report is that, 3 of these abductees, have been released. Do you think there was money involved, or did they do it from the good of their heart?
For terrorists, I'm going to take it from this first. Let me start from somewhere. For terrorists, there's an ideology. So when a terrorist has, because of that ideology, it's easier for you to negotiate with the terrorists, because then you can actually meet them somewhere and say, okay, we can give you this if you give us this. You can do this if you do this, like that, like that, like that. So there can be a compromise of some sort that can actually end the terrorism. There's always something, there's a goal. But for the bandits, money. That is all it is. We saw the BBC report yesterday. I don't know if you saw that. There's a BBC Hausa report that actually did a detailed documentary. Yes, it did a detailed documentary on the issues, and you could see how confident those people were on camera. That's to show you that there's no fear. They're not even concerned about anything. They're living their life. In fact, they're living more comfortably than even us, the average citizens. So for terrorism... Even
after threatening the president, vice president, and a sitting governor.
They are so confident about themselves because they are obviously sure of what they have behind whosoever it is that is backing them. However, for the people that were just released, I think obviously payments were made. If you look at the last train attack, the train attack is actually that of ISWAP took credit for it. ISWAP took credit for it, so they're not actually with bandits; they're actually with ISWAP. So whatever the negotiation is, there's been a lot of falling out. For some of it, I've heard. Some of it I don't think I would want to see on national television. But for the ones that are actually already out there, I remember that after the Kuje attack, there was a report by the aide of Gumi. I think he did an interview, granted an interview, and when he was saying, where he was saying that he gave that there was a notice given to the government, and the government willfully ignored it. However, those people that were released were supposed to be some sort of ransom for some other people to be released.
Okay, but you see, there's this part that is a bit confusing. When, at the initial stage, when this incident took place, they said it wasn't about the money. The group said that government knew what they wanted. And sources at that time said that it was because they wanted their children who had been arrested by the police or security agencies to be released. And what they said at that time was that they should release their children, and they would release some of the abductees. They didn't say all. They said they would release some of the abductees, and then negotiation would begin. So it was a bit tight because, I mean, it was like they were having the upper hand. Okay, release our people, and we'll release some, and then negotiation will begin. And now, after a while, we saw that they started collecting money. So what exactly is going on? What game are they playing?
You know, it's the argument of saying that they were going to release some. So obviously they were going to collect money from some and release some in exchange for, because I recall that we released, I think, 10 of their people after much deliberation and negotiation, and then they released some of the train victims. However, they went back to the prison, attacked the prison, and released everybody.
In fact, the story in the paper today said that one of the released persons, one of those 3 that were released yesterday, said that 6 of the people from Kuje prison are now in the forest with them.
I'm not surprised, because you don't. There are so many. You get a bit. You get very. You're perplexed, angry, amazed, and at the same time, in that whole mashed up feeling, you find it a bit funny as well that Nigeria is in the state that it's in spite and despite of everything that we actually have, the resources, the manpower, the infrastructure, the security infrastructure, because I refuse to believe that it's actually because of lack of security infrastructure. That's why we are actually having most of these issues. The government needs to actually come clean, tell us if we are actually fending for ourselves now, if each and every one of us is a moving sovereign entity of our own, and if we have to build our own personal police and personal state borders and everything else, so that we can actually protect ourselves. Because that's the point that we actually get into.
Communities are actually doing that already.
Yeah. Yes. So away
for some of them now, they are paying tax to.
Yes, they are. To be able
to the bandits.
Yes, to be able to go to their farms and to go about their daily activities.
We have a new auxiliary government in town.
Away from the insecurity, it's another huge problem that is bedeviling the country at the moment, the strike by ASU. Today, the Labour Congress is going on a solidarity protest for ASU. And it's not just the NLC, the electricity workers are also joining in the protest, the banking sector, bankers are joining in the protest, and some other groups. Do you think that this will help?
Again, you cannot shame the shameless. If they care enough, by everything else happening would have been okay to actually tackle most of the issues. However, speaking on, I have an unpopular opinion about the ASU strike. I have a very unpopular opinion. I've actually gone at loggerheads with some of my lecturers, some of the people who lectured me in school, some other professors as well. I do not think, for most of what ASU is asking for, it is, I feel personally, this is a personal opinion, that it is unrealistic if education remains under the government. If you look at the MOU, for one, I agree that there should be a review, an upward review, in fact, 150% of their salaries, because it is not fair how much they're actually receiving. You see a professor who has done most of his life not even being able to collect up to 400,000 naira after tax. So I personally do not think that the rest of it, I don't think that it's possible if the educational system remains under the government the way it is at this moment. But if it remains under the way it is at the government at this moment, because we keep comparing the Nigerian educational system to those abroad. We say, oh, look at Harvard, they're sending their children to Harvard, they're sending their students to Oxford, and etc. And I say, if you look at how much those people pay as school fees, you would understand that you are paying it very cheap to get the quality of what you're getting. Do I think the educational system can be better? Yes. I think it should be better. But look at samples all around the world. Look at everywhere all around the world. For those educational, those universities that we actually look up to, that we make comparison with, they have very expensive systems and structures in place. Because I would remember some years ago, I was with some of my friends from the US, and we're discussing some theoretical concepts. I studied mass communication. So we're discussing some theoretical concepts in communication practice, critical theories precisely. And they were very happy with the depth of which we were taught about those concepts in school. And they were like, they're interested in coming to do a course or two in Nigeria. Maybe they'll come and do maybe a PG course. So they were like, how much like my school fees? I was like, well, I paid 19,800 naira in ABU to go to school. Like, convert that to dollars. I was like, that's like $52.
That's right.
And they screamed, like, really $52? I was like, yeah, that's how much I paid for. And they were taken aback by it. And we see our students go outside the country, they go compete with these schools, they win competitions. It shows you, we cannot have the budget of a Passat and want the comfort of a Benz.
All right.
So that's just the truth.
All right, let's take a look at another newspaper, this time the Punch newspaper. The Punch has a lead story that says, ASU strike, NLC's solidarity rally holds today. Police warn hoodlums. There's a rider that says, police, NSCDC personnel to be deployed in critical infrastructure. Lagos Union directs electricity aviation workers to join rallies. No going back on protests. Mega rally holds in Abuja Wednesday. This is coming from the NLC. And then beneath that, we have terrorists free 3 Kaduna train passengers. Protest continues. Then we also have the story, Tinubu Amechi's allies disagree over vote buying allegation. Hypertensive man, Nigerians outrage. Police go after last man. We also have the story here, terrorists injure soldiers in Abuja. There's another, this story is already in another paper where it's confirmed that those soldiers have been killed. And then above the masthead of the Punch, we have federal government gets 16 billion tax credit from Lagos Badagry Expressway. Wike Atiku has heeded my advice, says Autumn. 75% of houses in Nigeria are substandard. This is coming from Vice President Oshibajo. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
Okay, now let's take a look at this particular story about, you know what is actually happening in the aviation sector right about now. And, the Senate now saying that wealthy Nigerians smuggling Jet A1 to neighboring countries. Who are these wealthy Nigerians? And, is that the major reason why, flight operations are being disrupted right now?
Before I delve into that, I saw the other day that I'm supposed to go to Kano on Sunday, and I'm seeing that Abuja to Kano is now 75,000 naira. I screamed. If I throw a stone, it will land in the Emir's Palace from Abuja, and the roads are not safe, not entirely safe. Yeah. You can't. 75,000 is still cheaper than ransom. So that's where you do the mathematics and calculation and all of that. But the aviation fuel issue has actually been a very pressing one for some time now, for a while now. Them coming out now to say people smuggling fuel to Jet A1 to neighboring countries, wealthy Nigerians, and so to speak. The wealthiest of Nigerians in the country, they make the larger 2%. Them are the Senate. In fact, politicians, as we know it. Very few businessmen are actually there. So if it's still within them, they themselves mention names, name names, so that we'll know who to point our fingers to. It's everything that can go wrong has not finished going wrong in this country, and that is from the. If you look at the aviation sector issues, you look at the road transport issues, train folded up. Everything. There are so many issues happening all at the same time. I feel bad for the next president. I really feel pity for the person. The person just has to pick one struggle and just deal with it throughout his tenure and just go and let somebody else come and continue, because you can't fix all of it. The damages that have been created in the last 8 years it's deep-rooted.
But one thing that is a bit difficult to comprehend is the fact that if you look at it now, there are disruptions, flight disruptions, so many people cannot travel. Why would anybody make a capital out of that? I mean, if indeed some Nigerians are taking this Jet A1 out of the country when airlines in Nigeria are finding it difficult to access the same thing.
It's selfish interest. Now, at the end of it, for every civil unrest, somebody is making a lot of money from it. It is just the way it is. It's just the way the world works, and it's the responsibility of the government to protect us from those kind of situations. Exactly. That's why there are laws. That's why there are policies in place. What's FAA doing? What's NCAA doing? These are what's it called? These are bodies that have been created to ensure that there's regulation and checks and balances in most of these things. But even flight disruptions, plus whether there's availability of Jet A1 as well, there is no discipline in the aviation system, let's be very honest. You go to the airport. I remember there was this one time last year, I was flying to Sokoto. I'm not going to mention the airline. We were at the airport for a flight of 1 o'clock. We didn't fly till 8. No apology, nothing. They gave us one useless package with expired biscuits and some. That's a compensation.
That's an apology.
Now, I have been delayed for I was in Cairo. So I was in Sharm el-Sheikh going to Cairo, and we're delayed for a 1 hour flight. They paid us each, I think, about 100 Egyptian pounds, and they gave us food. They delayed us for an hour. Now, when they delayed us, there was another time again that we're flying again from Cairo back to Sharm, I think. I can't remember exactly. This was like in 2020. And they delayed us again. And we we're still giving compensation for that delay. But the and there was in fact, the flight manager, I think, the airline manager came down to apologize to everybody, made everybody feel comfortable. And these things rarely happen.
There were explanations.
There were explanations, but Nigeria just tell you now. In fact, now they have a national anthem now at the airport. This was due to unforeseen circumstances. If you go to the stand to go and ask them, it's because of aviation fuel. Whether it is aviation fuel, whether it is not aviation fuel, there is no discipline in the aviation sector, and we really need to do more.
Okay, now with everything going on, or every sector almost folding up in Nigeria, you know, one thing that we know that the government has actually been against is, you know, people coming out to protest. You can actually, you know, see from the NSAS protests and everything. But if you look at it, there are actually protests going on, you know, pockets of protests going on, you know, in the whole of the country. And this would actually, you know, spring up, or more would actually spring up with this, especially with this NLC, you know, protest. And then we're seeing that the electricity, banking, aviation sectors are joining in the protest. Now, will this be enough to actually nudge, you know, the leadership of Nigeria to actually do something about at least one or two sectors?
Protest for me is one of the most effective ways to actually get the government to actually do something. In the NSAS protest in 2020 was the first time that we saw the people band together for one single thing. Personally, I think why the NSAS protest failed was not because so much as because, oh, the government did not want to answer us, as much as we were not as coordinated as we thought we were. We did not negotiate. Martin Luther King Jr. would say that the essence of a protest is so that you can force the government to come to a table to negotiate for something that you want. But we didn't negotiate. We said there was no face, there was no this thing. Nobody is going to come and address over how many thousand people. That was where, for me, I felt like we got it wrong. Okay. And United Nations Article 19 said citizens, countries who are members of the UN, citizens whose country are member of the UN will always use protest as a way to hold their government accountable. So even section in the Nigerian Constitution, we have freedom of expression there, we have freedom of assembly. And the culmination of these sections are what we use as our own backbone for the need for us to protest. But that, again, is also taken away by Section 45 that says that in the event of public disturbance, public nuisance, or public destruction, but these things are obviously going to create public disturbance. Definitely. So Section 45 says the government can actually shut it down. So because of that, there's a lot of give and take with protest. But I think that if we come together again, and this time more coordinated, negotiate for one thing, for something, we might be able to get it, honestly, because that's the last thing the government wants is an international embarrassment at this point, because I've noticed that the current sitting government right now, they like to save face as much as they can. They want to save face as much as they want, as much as it makes them look good. Well, so they don't really like that much of a public an international embarrassment.
Well, some persons have expressed concern that it appears that this particular government is already folding up, like, you know, with just a couple of months left, and that it appears that this government feels that it has concluded its job and it's just waiting for May to come so that a new person will come in. Do you think that it can still change the trend between now and May?
Personally, I don't think much can change. The president himself has said it, that he's tired, that he wants to go. President himself has said it. He said it on a rise when...
But if work is put in, don't you think that something could be done between now and May? If some work
A lot of things can be done between now and next month. A lot of things can be done, but then it has to come from someone who is willing to actually do something. Now, the president, I personally think the president feels a little bit embarrassed owing to how the last primary elections went. Now the president is beginning to see that he has less and less influence, not as much as he thought that he did. So because of that, I don't know, the man has just been, he has been giving off this vibe, even right from the Channel's interview with Maupe, I think sometime last year or early this year, where Maupe asked 2023, what's his take? And he said, that's not my concern. And that is we're disappointed again, all over again. Because for some of us, we campaigned very openly for him. We hoped for change, we hoped for something to happen. And I'm never going to be apologetic about it. It was my democratic right to vote. And I did, we voted for him. And because we thought that oh, this guy was going to come in with this military demeanor and is going to take care of things. And this is where we are right now.
All right.
Utterly disappointed.
Let's take a look at this newspaper. At the top of the page there, we have Buhari to Amusan. You've left us with unforgettable memories, tears of joy. We have writers that says, Hail Brube, Team Nigeria for making nation proud. Atiku Tinubu Sanwo-Olu Abiodun Obaseki Okowa congratulates a gold winner in 100-meter hurdles. Bolt celebrates gold medalist, says she's superb. We also have organ harvesting allegation. Court grants Ekweremadu's wife bail. Senator remains in police custody. We have federal government procures, still talking about, insecurity. Federal government procures 6 more attack helicopters as terrorists release 4 Kaduna train passengers, keep 39. 3. It's 3 that we're reading.
You've been seeing 3, 4.
But it says here 4. Now we have families, ground activities at Transportation Ministry 121 days after. Military beefs up security around Buhari campus law school. FG closes FGC Kwali. And the lead story here talks about Autumn. Whatever happened at PDP primary is past. Atiku, now my candidate, I'm behind him, says opposition party is strong. Institution will always settle its issues. Anxiety within NWC governors. Governors Forum BOT over Wike's comment. An ex-vice president reaching out to old associates in the APC.
All right, it's not only tales of gloom and sadness from Nigeria, right? I mean, Toby Lover Amusan, she made Nigeria proud.
Yeah, she did.
When I saw the video yesterday, I've never felt more proud about being Nigerian, and sport has a way of doing that. Most of the time, whenever there is sport has a way of banding the country together. Not just even Nigeria, any country that is actually in disarray, and we're very happy about it. For the first time, this was one of the very few rare moments where we were not Igbo, Hausa, or Yoruba. We were not Muslim or Christian. We were all Nigerians, and everybody was proud, and everybody, for the first time, I heard the national anthem.
Exactly. How did you feel when the national anthem on that stage?
For the first time, the national anthem meant something.
Yes.
It meant something.
It was so exciting.
I had goosebumps, honestly. Even right now, speaking about it, I'm still having goosebumps right now, and I'm really happy. I was really happy about it, and hopefully that more and more of this, because when you travel out of the country, you get to see how Nigerians are being looked on, and it's not a very. I was on one of these international airports some time ago, and this media, I'm not going to mention which country, but I was in one of these international airports some time ago, and I remember the immigration. I was passing immigration for passport check, and the guy was so smiling. Welcome. Got to my turn. Well, I was delayed. This 1 minute. Went in, came back with one blue light thing. He looked under the blue light, he looked at me, he looked at it again.
Extra scrutiny, right?
And then someone else had to come and keep attending to people while he was scrutinizing me. So that's the situation we're in. So when we see these, when we make this kind of international impact, it says a lot. But it's still quite depressing when you look at it that the investment, the country did not make the investment in her to get that. Yes, it is very few athletes still agree to identify as Nigerians, despite the fact that the country did not invest in them. We saw that with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua wanted to fight for Nigeria. Nigeria refused to invest in him, and he went back and fought for London, for the UK. And from what I understand, Toby has been doing his training in the US for the longest time. Our coach, most of our team are actually Americans. So the country is not really as, we need more of that. And I'm hoping that with time we can actually get, I'm really, and that aside, really, it was really a proud moment for each and every one of us, and I'm glad.
And isn't it hopeful that we have more of this event so that Nigerians will show their unity? Because when you look at all the comments on social media, I saw the story, I saw the APC issued a statement, the PDP issued a statement, they were together on it. Nobody is talking about she's from this area. Toby Loba is a Nigerian,
but
and
why
that's
can't
what matters.
that be replicated in politics?
Exactly. Why can't that be what we stand for? We are Nigerians first and foremost. That's all that matters.
Selfish interest in politics. I think that's why there needs to be something to divide the country on an ideological base that is very fundamental, and that's why politics is as how do I put this? It's as
So between yesterday and today, we make noise as being all Nigerians, and then from tomorrow, we start saying, "Oh, you are from."
Because if you notice, nobody has said, "Oh, Toby is a Christian" or "Toby is a Muslim."
Nobody's talking about that.
The name is Western. Nobody has said, "Oh, she's from Southwest." We're not going to celebrate anybody from. But this is national pride. In the face of national pride, those things become infinitesimal, which we are really, really proud of. Which I'm really, really glad that actually happened. It reminded all of us that we need to calm down, and if we band together enough, we can actually do something.
And that is hope.
All right. Thank you so much, Mukhtar Suleiman, a public affairs commentator, for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Thank you so much.
It was an awesome time with you. All right, so we'll take a quick breather, and when we return at the top of the hour, the show continues. Do stick around.
But in a situation where you find that look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that